or BeeKonnected. What in the world? And today we're going to talk about strategies for reading the room. How many of you are familiar with the topic of when you go into a networking meeting or a mixer or any kind of event where you are making an attempt to read the room? We're going to talk about that concept as it pertains to BeeKonnected. So let me introduce you to some of the folks that will be weighing in and sharing their perspective on these questions. If you're in the chat, like Patty, hey, Patty, we're going to be talking about some of those questions. If you're just in the chat, you're not on stage here, feel free to put any of your strategies, any of your questions, anything you might have in the chat. So let me tell you who's here right now. I'm going to start with Christine Dean. She's a mission-driven business strategist, and we all know her as the networking diva. She's a marketing coach, fractional marketing director, and CMO. She produces podcasts. She loves veterans, and she is a nonprofit executive. She's passionate really about helping everyone succeed, and I'm excited that she's on BeeKonnected, and I'm excited that she's part of my network. And let me also introduce Jeff Wright, who's here. Jeff is really the creative mastermind steering the dynamic ship, as he calls it, of the limitless life media. He began that journey in 2002 as an insurance and financial sales professional, and now has moved his way into digital marketing and has had many sales award achievements, as well as he now has a strong passion and a lot of input on digital marketing, growth hacks, and AI tools. And so we had Christine just did an exciting show that I saw and recommend everybody to look on, using AI to create art and actually improve your artistic presence. So anybody with creative bents, I would encourage you to look at that. And I know Jeff and his crew are going to have a lot of things. And then we have Zip Zipton. He is really an investor and what we call an igniter of dreams. He's a catalyst, a connector, and he's a doer. He's a serial entrepreneur and networker. Met Zip through networking, and he plays pickleball. But before that, he was in football, rugby, and now he plays pickleball and golf. So that's what happens when we get older. So they take their toll on our bodies. So today we're going to talk about this topic we call reading the room. So the first question I want to throw out to you guys, and then I'm going to kind of sit back and let you guys give me your thoughts, is how do you show up on BeeKonnected? And that would be on all components of BeeKonnected. Your public profile.
I'm going to grab that, David, and say right off, read the room. Okay. Am I the only one that thought the wording on that was a little strange? Just because we are reading, but normally when we read a room, we're looking for visuals, which is completely opposite, right? So it's hard to do that sometimes in an online environment. Right. So you can't read anybody's faces. You can't really read the nonverbal stuff. Are they approachable or not? So you kind of have to make certain assumptions when you walk into any online environment. And so I think that's where we really start with this, right? So when we walk into an online environment, we don't know what's going on. We don't know who the key players are. We don't know what they're doing. We don't know if they didn't respond because they're busy, or they not respond because they don't like me. Right. So we have to be careful with our assumptions and what's going on in that online space. So, I really think we need to think it online is different than in person. It really is.
Yeah, I totally agree. And actually, that's brilliant on many levels. So when you think about reading the room and you realize that most cases online, you're not in the room as you would normally do in a in-person event, but we have kind of the same objective, right? The same objective of getting to that on that journey of trust. Stephen Covey Jr. actually wrote a book called The Speed of Trust. And one of the biggest things that he points out and we learn in that book is the fact that getting on that journey is much different and much more difficult, even when you're doing what we're doing here today. There are things that are more effective in some cases in some cases that are less effective. And so you're exactly right. So reading the room, uh, it does take that mental shift from looking at body language, seeing who's there, getting a sense. But I think some of the fundamentals are the same. And that's why I
Mhm.
said reading the room. So, Christine, you got it. As always, you're brilliant. Jeff, what do you think about reading the room when it comes to the BeeKonnected platform or online?
Yeah, I think when showing up with your digital presence, I think brand is everything. So just remember, it doesn't matter if you're on the phone or, um, I think that some of those days I don't find myself doing that because it's always like now it's whether you're in a virtual platform like this or you're just live streaming or whatever is like, well, don't forget, it's about your tonality. It's about the enthusiasm that you bring to any type of call. I mean, I'm super pumped that I got Bora Bora behind me. I mean, you can't tell. No, just I'm just kidding. But I feel like you want to bring that enthusiasm because since you're not in person, it's still important that you show up with enthusiasm. And when you don't show up with enthusiasm, you're I mean, it's even easier for people, I feel like, to just disconnect because you're just I think there's some type of that attraction magnet or whatever you want to call it, that if you're trying to attract people into your community, you still want to have that enthusiasm, that excitement. You want to use proper tonality when it's appropriate because it can be a big turnoff. Just because you're virtual does not mean that you still don't want to have that presence, that virtual presence, almost like you would in person. You might even want to put it up a notch because you're not in person. And that includes like with your enthusiasm and your tonality. I mean, sometimes, you want to scale it down a little bit. You can't always be at a level 10. That's not what I'm talking about. But there is that appropriate amount of tonality that we do want to make sure that, when you're, however you're wanting to come across, just remember that it's always about, you got to be mindful that you still have your personal brand and you do want to have your reputation. Even if you're online, you're still building a personal brand.
Jeff,
I
I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Right? Tone is everything. And normally, if you walked into a room in person, we could just smile and be like, oh, look, that's a friendly person. You walk into an online environment that's only digital and it doesn't involve images, it doesn't involve photos, it doesn't involve video, right? How do you know? Because someone came into the room, they're smiling. You don't know. You have to actually say it. You have to do it. You have to make those comments and set the tone for the room, right? That's a huge part of it. So I love that you brought that up, Jeff.
Well, and I think truly there's another point there, Christine, that he made, which I think is also another level of brilliance that I think you guys are sharing, and I love it, is that you do have to take it up. I used to sing on the stage, and it's not just the tonality or the quality of your voice. Is when you're projecting, you're doing things much larger, if you will, than what you would do if you were one to one, right? Because you do it, people don't get the same effect. So it is also a lot like that. So you also have to show up. The other thing I think you said, Jeff, that which is important when you talk about brands, sometimes people get into their marketing brain, and I get nothing wrong with marketing. So don't, I live with one, so I get what that's all about. And Cheryl's not on here, so don't tell her I talked about her. But I'm just saying, it's a lot different when you're thinking about when you say brand. Well, brand, I'm old, right? So when I read a book called Dress for Success way back. It's a really old book for those that are young and watching this. And how you show up, that first impression is critical. So when you think about being online, being in BeeKonnected, being your profile picture is critical, right? Your Each of you had a great profile. I did your introductions from what you put on your profile. So I already knew you. If I didn't know you before, I could look at it, and you should pay some attention to basically how people, because we can research things online, right? It's unlike in a room, you can blow in, blow out. Might take somebody a while to figure out who you were and what you were doing, right? But on this platform or any other platform for that, what you put there is critical. So that show up on the platform is critical in terms of your profile. What other thoughts do you guys have, Christine? Up, you're on mute. For some reason, I saw your lips moving.
Right? The ability to go with the flow online live. Right? We talk about brand, and we don't want to associate brand with salesy, right? That's not quite the same thing. And
Right.
so you can be on brand in addition to without being sales pitchy, right? In the online environment, we need to take the time to build those connections. Like Jeff said, are we being friendly? What's the tone we're putting across, right? Sometimes we tend to want to cut to the chase on things, and that's not really setting up that environment. And I think especially in BeeKonnected and online environments, we need to take that time to set that rapport and get to know somebody rather than, nobody wants to get married on the first date, right? So
Oh,
take some time to
I'm
get to
loving
know
you. I'm
someone.
loving you right now, Christine, because you just hit on one of the points in terms of how do you decide when to engage and what do you do? And the second question, and you've kind of showing up, but also you've really started us, provided a decent segue. And we could talk a whole lot more about how do you show up. And that's why these are 30-minute shows, because we can always come back and we can drill into one aspect or another. And as you're seeing, we got some brilliant entrepreneurs, marketers, other people that are here that can share. But when you talk about that, that is one of the most important things. If you walk into the room and you're first, I run a in-person networking group. So just make the leap here. Think about online and walk into Warrior Networking, our online group. Okay, so you come in there, and the first thing you do is decide to post your stuff. Just start telling everybody, this is what I do, this is what I do, this is what I do. I don't think that's the right way to do it. How do you decide what to post? Requires that you spend a little bit of time and kind of invest in the group a little bit, right? Figure out what's the conversation. Have you ever been in a conversation with somebody, a group of people, and somebody walks in and they're totally off subject? They're totally in their world and they just want to come in. What do you think about that person when they leave the room? You think, well, I won't say, the kind of the some things that people say, but I'm just saying they don't have that social awareness. So talk about that for a minute. Look, I'm going to give it to Jeff for a second because Christine, you weighed in, you kind of triggered it. So Jeff, what do you think about that? And again, just unmute.
Yeah, I was typing some stuff there. So yeah, I think it's really, again, if you're really wanting to level up, not only like in your networking efforts, but yeah, it's how you're showing up. And I think for me personally, and I can only speak for myself, right? That's why we're sharing our perspective.
Right.
Is yeah, I definitely want to, like, when I'm coming up, and I want to be known as the go-to guy for, and I think Christine, I can't speak for Christine, but I know Christine is really good. Another reason why we're doing some joint things together is, yeah, you want to have a service first attitude. How can I serve you? How can I help? Because when you show up at like gimme, instead of like how can I, what you want to bring value first. And so what I would do, just an example of that is like, yeah, sharing some tips and some things that really can help you level up your business, or maybe there's even some challenges you have and you have a genuine question, and actually coming through with an authentic, genuine answer to that, and not just be like, hey, I'm going to give you some type of surface level relationship here, because that's not what BeeKonnected is about. That's not the type of community I want to build. I don't want surface level. I want to be able to go into those deeper connections and really make sure that, okay, I'm showing that I care about you. I care about your challenges. And I actually want to move the needle, not only maybe both personally, but also professionally. I want to see what I can do for you there. And that's not going to be because I'm going to act like I hate, if you do, nothing against used car sales people, because actually I just bought a new car and I had a really good relationship. But I'm just saying, the whole mantra of like, we're just being sold to, and there's that surface level, we don't want that. And that eventually that's got to bite you. and then you know what. I mean, you just don't want to go there, and you want to be seen as you do want to be seen as the authority, but you also want to be seen as someone that makes genuine, authentic connections. And that's the way I want to come across.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's perfect. Christine, did you have any other thoughts on that regard to showing up? Jeff hit on authenticity, hit on being, showing up to serve. Those are all things that we often talk about as a networking diva. I'm sure you talk about as well. What other thoughts do you have? Anything else on that?
That's really Jeff's hit the nail on the head with that. The idea of being a unique person who actually cares about other people, right? It's we don't want to just it's not about the sales. It's not all about the next sale. People aren't just numbers, right? So if we take the time to actually get to know people and develop relationships with them rather than trying to always sell whoever's in the room at all times, right? We've all had somebody come up to us and we're like, oh no, here they come. Because we know they're gonna start pitching us, and we're like, yeah, I don't even get a hi, how you doing today, right? It's straight like, hey, you want to buy my stuff? Want to buy my stuff? And you're like, go away, stop.
Yeah, that's
You don't
brilliant.
want people to run when they see you coming. That's huge. Whether you're in a for-profit or a nonprofit, whatever the business is, if you're always asking people for money, at some point they start kind of going, yeah, I don't think I'm going to go hang over by that person because they're not being friendly. So that's a big part of it. We want to develop relationships. So that's what it's all about.
Yeah, Debbie's Prediger's on, and she hit it. She said you hit it right on the head because basically, it's about. Well, I always break it down into something that I heard way back in my days is people don't want to know what you know until they know that you care. And so part of it is the way you show you care is you listen. And you can do that online. You can listen to what's going on both in the room, both on the feed, and so on. So uh, and you think about that. I know Ricky Jean Wright just joined us. By the way, for those of you who don't know Ricky Jean Wright, he's a serial entrepreneur, journeyman networker. He's an Americana singer songwriter. He's a storyteller, and he's out there. He's got the podcast theme for my Warrior versus Zombie podcast, and does things and is a resource to our entire community here locally as well as on BeeKonnected. So, Ricky, did you have any thoughts on this subject before we talk specifically? I want to get into specifically the other two questions is, given how you engage, and we've already kind of established with Christine, Jeff's content, that you're showing up, you're being authentic, you're showing up to serve, you're showing up to really learn something about people before you start pitching or throwing your stuff out there. What other thoughts do you have, Ricky, about that? And unmute. So, because I muted you, Ricky.
Well, I was late today with some family stuff here at my house,
Yeah.
but I showed up to serve today, and when I got online, I saw that there was somebody, Scotty Barnes or something, was being very lewd and crude in the chat, and I blocked him.
Okay.
So,
well, that's one of the things that we have is those of us who have groups and those of us that are trying to provide value, we have to come in with the intention of being somewhat shepherds and as I say, Sherpas, right? Making sure that to the best of our ability, we kind of put a hedge about, make it a safe space. So, we don't all have to agree, right? But we actually, when we're on the platform, we have a responsibility. That's why there's more than just me here. That's why Christine's here. That's why Ricky's here. That's why Zip is here. That's why Jeff is here. So we're getting the message out, but we don't want it to be perverted. One of the ways you don't show up on any group, on any show, on any platform is you don't show up to take it over. If you're showing up to co-opt the group, to what they call hijack, you're not going to last very long in that group. And the other thing is when you hijack it, you become known as just that, right? So you're showing up. So that is totally the inverse of what we're trying to do here. So thank you,
Right.
Ricky.
And setting the tone, I'm going to just piggyback on that, David, setting the tone for the room, like Jeff had mentioned earlier, right? And part of that is not just what you say, it's what you don't say. And it's a matter of how you manage the room. My
Mhm.
background's teaching. So when I taught college, one person in the room can really damage the whole environment, right? So sometimes you have a toxic person that you need to get out of that environment, right? Or you need to establish the rules and expectations, right? And so sometimes you might have people in that online environment that you're working with that you're like, oh no, that's not okay, right? So you might need
Right.
to block, you might need to delete, you might need to remove them from the space, right? Because creating, especially as you said, as a leader, creating the correct environment is huge. And as a leader, that's your responsibility.
Well, and the thing is, Christine, I absolutely 1,000% agree with you. But if you're part of a group, if you are part of BeeKonnected, if you're part of a BeeKonnected group, if you're there, I think we're all leaders. I've got to tell you, that's one of the things that I think is the most valuable about Warrior Networking, my in-person group, is whatever, is everybody not only shows up to serve, but they recognize everybody has their own leadership role. And so that's part of that's why we have on the platform, again, another thing that we have is you can score people. You can actually rate them just like an Uber ride, right? And give them a 5-star rating. Somebody comes in, they misbehave. As a leader, you can actually protect the rest of the community by giving that kind of feedback. Or you can, serve that person by giving them a 5-star rating and saying why I love Christine, why I love Jeff, why I love Zip, why I love Ricky Jean, why these people are important to get to know. So that's, again, people look for what we call social proof, right? So we're getting down to like 4 or 5 minutes here. As applying what we just said within a BeeKonnected group or on the feed. And I think we're probably going to, let's stick with the group right now because we've kind of had that group kind of thought process going. We'll talk about the BeeKonnected feed, which is also a much larger group, but I think it maybe warrants having that a focused discussion on what to do on the feed on our next BeeKonnected What in the World. So we'll do that then. So what are your thoughts about it within the group? And I know we're all learning the groups, the way it presents, and so on. But what are you thinking, Jeff? Do you have a thought on the groups before I'll give it back to
Yeah,
Christine or Ricky?
I was just monitoring some of the chat here, and I think Debbie brings up a great point here because she relates to, like, she's talking about like the whole, like, why Uber has done well about asking for ratings and feedback. Well, I think that holds true in groups.
Right.
I think, like, you want to be asking in your groups that you form on BeeKonnected, you want to be asking for that feedback. You want to be able to take constructive criticism, and that's
Sure.
what it should be. It should be constructive criticism, right? We're not out there to like bash people, but we want to be able to like be taking that that feedback and then actually being like, oh, okay, like, because having those different perspectives, I know that I remember I was a part of Gold's Gym, and not bashing Gold's Gym at all, but they kind of started closing up shops here in St. Louis and across because they weren't listening to their customers about some of the things. And you got other companies now like Planet Fitness because they're actually listening and that's been so that's just one example of, like, when you listen to your customers, you listen to your members.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's going to help you just be serving at a higher level for your community. And by
that's
the way, we are building community. We are building movements. This is not just like some type of one-off group that, like, so as far as where I'm standing, I think it really is important that we are listening to our audience. We are listening. We don't necessarily have to implement all that, but we should be at least encouraging some of that feedback.
Yeah, I love that. And when it comes to groups in particular, that's why I love that, because you, as a leader of a group, or you've created a group, or you decided to be part of a group, right? That group, it's not every group's the same, right? It's not just this group, this group, this group. There is going to be a personality or a focus. That's why when you look at a group, look at the questions they ask, see what people are posting, get to know kind of what the flow of information. Don't just, again, throw in okay, let's cut and paste this in every group and say, that's important, because it might not be important to that group, especially when you're not just talking about a kind of a standard BeeKonnected group, right? When you're talking about the people there. What do you think about that, Christine? Or go ahead, I'll give it to you first, and then we'll probably give Ricky the last word here.
Well, you make a good point about not spamming all the groups with the same information if it's not relevant. It's different if it's relevant, right?
Right.
So you mentioned the class that we just did on Saturday. We were teaching how to create images with AI art, right? And so if somebody's interested, if it's a group that's about AI, sure. If it's a group about business development, if it's a group about art, right? So there's people that might be interested. It's more of a cutting edge topic, right? So anything that has to do with entrepreneurship, cutting edge, right? So when I share that kind of information, I try and make sure it's relevant to whatever the room is that I'm in and the people that are in that room, right?
Yeah, and I think you're, again, brilliant is the fact that saying when you share something why you shared it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times people will just, like I say, cut and paste, but they're not thinking about the context of that group. So I shared your that post that I made on your group because I watched it. I thought it was very good. I thought it was useful. And in the groups that I shared it, I said, this is why. If you're a creative, if you're an artist, if you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to use this tool, this is probably worth, it's like a 2-hour thing, right? It's probably worth at least diving into. And I wouldn't just share that one with everybody if I didn't think that. You see what I'm saying? So you hit the nail again right on the head. Ricky, any closing comments? I know you got in late, but we're at the top of the hour, and I want to be respectful. Next time we come back, which will be this Wednesday at 7:30 p.m., we're going to talk about maybe some of these concepts as it pertains to how you show up on the feed, and that's going to be similar, but a little more focused on that. So, Ricky, do you have any thoughts?
I do. One of the things that I've learned from being around a while, I've been in like about 12 years in the networking space. When someone is overly aggressive and they're always trying to sell you before they even find out, what your name is almost, it's a sure sign that they're a failure, that they're overly aggressive because they're desperate. And I think sometimes people don't realize that the flags go up and we already know you're a failure because you're so aggressive.
Yeah, and whether they're a failure or not, I learned it back when Christine invoked the bar scenario, and I was going to go there, and I thought, but you don't show up at the bar and tell everybody how great you are and then ask for their sister's phone number. That doesn't work. And so it is desperation. Then all of a sudden, either you are totally socially unaware or you're just a jerk, and people are going to make those conclusions, whether you are or not. So part of our job on this show and this BeeKonnected, what in the world, is to take the tools that we have available on this platform and make those tools that can support your business, not destroy your business. And they're so powerful, honestly, that you can get exposed in a negative way to 25,000 people and ultimately 1 million as we grow and stuff like that. Or you can be exposed negatively or positively. And so we in Warrior Networking and in our community of Sherpas want you to be as successful as you possibly can be. So thank you, Ricky. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Zip. And anybody else, Debbie, and everybody that's contributed here. And we'll be back again at 7:30 on Wednesday and next Monday at 1:30. This is all Central Time, by the way. And we invite anybody. In fact, anybody that wants to, that has their alignment with us, we'll give you an opportunity as a Sherpa to weigh in as well on these shows as time permits. So love you guys. And I'm going to stop the recording now, and we'll be back next time.